Hello everyone, I'm Hadil and today we're going to talk about duplicating objects and copying data in Blender. It sounds like a very insignificant thing to learn in Blender, but trust me, I've struggled with duplicating and copying data from one object to another for a long time while creating with Blender. The first one is an easy one to learn and is one that I learned fairly recently in my journey through learning Blender. And it's mainly because it's something that you're gonna look up when you first start to learn Blender. And it is kind of similar to other software as well. In Adobe, for instance, there are a lot of Command D to duplicate objects, but it's not necessarily giving you the exact same result. But D is almost always known as a shortcut for duplicating something. So it's much easier for me to remember the shortcut. My most used one is Shift D. And let's start by adding an object. I'll start with a round cube, and if you don't have these extra mesh over here, you can just go to Edit, Preferences, and it's a native add-on that you can add. If you go to Mesh, and then add Mesh Extra Objects. It's a useful add-on to add to Blender because it has a lot more mesh. And one of those is the round cube, which I use in the majority of my modeling if I'm modeling anything. Choose round cube, and then instead of 0.2 for a radius, I go with 1 so it looks more like a sphere. Okay, now let's say I want to duplicate this. I finished creating it and I want to duplicate it. I can just hit Shift D and I immediately have a duplicate of it. And you can also, as you move it, we still didn't click the mouse. If I hit X, for instance, it'll stick it to the X axis. And if I do Y, it'll move it there. But if I also hit Escape, then it doesn't really move it. It's there, the duplicate is there, as you can see, but it didn't really move it anywhere. And I usually do this if I want, let's say, to create a light, and I have something that I want as the emitter for the light, and then the one surrounding it to be a glass, for instance. Then I do this and I select one of them to scale down, and now I have one that is smaller than the other inside it. So that's one of my uses for it, or I can just move it somewhere else. And I'll post a few pictures of the things that I've duplicated before, although I don't think I need to give examples for duplicating objects because I'm probably using it in every project. But now, let's say I did this and I want it to be inside of it, and I want it to be the inner part of it, but I also want them to always have the same shape. If I hit Edit Mode on the outer one, and if you want to see everything, if you want things to be transparent, you can toggle transparency or X-ray, and now I can actually see all of the objects. So I can even click on the inner one. So if I hit 1, and let's hide the camera so you can actually see it. And now let's hit Edit Mode, and I want to edit this. Let's say I want to extrude these two, actually from the top view. Let's say I want to add some ears to this. At 1, I can extrude, do the same thing on this side, and then add a subdivision surface and right click, shade smooth on the object. Now I have something resembling an ear or ears, but the inside is still a circle, and nothing that I put on this applied to this. So how do we magically link them so whatever edits I add to the outer object applies to the inner object? If we move this to the side, now I add another mesh round cube. It's already on 1 because it just added 1 and it takes the last value. Okay, the magic formula is Alt D or Option D, depending on whether you're on a Mac or a Windows. Mine is a Mac, so it's Option D for me. And note what you see when I start editing the outer one. We select it, we hit Alt D, and then I'm going to just hit Escape and then scale it down. Now I have another object in here. I can just enter Edit Mode, go to the top, select these two, go to the front. Actually, I need to remove X-ray whenever I do this because I always select the bottom one by mistake. And then go to front view after I selected the top part. And let's add the ears. Do the same thing for these. Now add a subdivision surface and shade smooth. If I go into X-ray, I'm going to see that I already have the same exact edit. The only thing that doesn't link to it is the modifiers, because that's just separate for each object. But at least we've got the exact same edit that we did in edit mode. So if I actually move this to the side now, we can actually see that it also has the shade smooth on. So if I go to here, shade flat, it goes back, because now everything is just linked. But again, the modifiers tab is just not linked to the objects directly, so it's not necessarily considered a linked data here, but the mesh itself is linked with this other one. So whatever you do in here is going to apply to the other one. Now let's go back to shading smooth, and that's pretty much it. So the first one was a full copy or a separate copy, and this other one was a linked copy. The only difference is that this one used Shift D. Let's actually move this outward so we can see it. And I'm hitting Option Z in order to toggle X-ray, instead of just going up here and toggling it on and off. And you can see that even shade smooth didn't apply to this one. So this was a separate copy. So the two shortcuts that you need to know are Shift D for a separate or a full copy, and then Option D for a linked copy. Personally, I don't use linked copies that often, but I know 100% that I've used it on this for the After Dark project, because I knew that I might be editing the lights, whether making the glass a little bit bigger or the inside neon lights smaller or change the curves. I wanted it to apply to all of them. But when it comes to something like this project, I knew I didn't really care that much about changing the mesh. And even if I change it, I didn't care too much about uniformity or making it exactly the same. I like a little bit of randomness in my projects because it adds more movement and intrigue to the project. Okay, now because I said that the modifiers don't apply to all, I want to add the modifier to this one. So what I do is select this and select this one. The last one you select is going to be the active object, and the selected but inactive is going to be highlighted in red. And in every collection of selections, you're only going to have one active, and that active is the basis of your copies. And how I do this is with Command L or Control L on Windows, and then link or actually copy modifiers. So whatever modifiers were applied to this, even if I have 10 modifiers, is going to apply to this one. But now if I change anything, even if they're all selected, if I change, let's say, the level viewport on one of them, it's not going to apply to the other one. So what you need to do is, and this is one that I struggled with for a year, I think, before I learned that you can actually go on this value that you changed, with the active one being the one that you're going to copy from, and right click, copy to selected. And now if you actually activate this, you can see that it has the same exact values. And this works with anything. So if it's a number value like this one, or if it's a button like these two, so if I change on this one from this weird word to simple, I can click on this, but now with Shift, I can click on this again, so it's activated. And I can just right click on this button and say copy to selected. And it also works with checks and drop down menus. You can just right click on the final value that you chose and then copy to selected. Now if I go back, I can just say copy to selected without changing anything. You have no idea the amount of times I actually selected every mesh on my screen to change its values. It's crazy that I didn't know this trick from the beginning. It's a little annoying as well. And that's why I think this tutorial is really important, even though it's a very short one, because especially if you're coming from a different software like the Adobe software, any software really, where we used to select everything and then change its value. So if you have multiple texts or titles or whatever, and then you select them all, you can change the font, the colors, the size of the text, like any styling on it, just by selecting all of the text objects on your screen. But with this, with Blender, you cannot really do that. It acts as every mesh is separate from the other ones. And with Command L, you also have a lot of things that you can link. So you can link materials, and this is something that I use in every project. With link materials, you can apply the material to one, and then with Command L, you can link the materials, and then all of the selected ones will have that material, and any changes that you make to that material will apply to all, instead of just going to every mesh and applying the material to it separately. There are also animation data. So if I apply an animation to one, I can copy that, but anything other than that, I've never really used. So it's always copy modifiers, link materials, and I've used link animation data whenever I had animation that I wanted to apply to something else. And I've only used copy UV maps when I made a mistake with the UV map before duplicating my object. And so I had the mistake on all of my objects, and because they're similar, you can actually copy the UV maps and it'll apply. But it's not one that I use often. And then there is one thing that you can also add as an add-on, where you can be more specific with copying data, and you can get it by going to preferences again, going to add-ons, and search for copy. Activate the interface copy attributes menu, and once you close it, you can go to it with Control C, not Command C. If you're on a Mac, I don't know how it applies on Windows, but if you're on a Mac, then instead of doing Command C, it's Control C. And if I hit Control C, you have more things to copy. And I use it most often with modifiers. So let's say I have the subdivision modifier on one of them, but then I applied a wireframe modifier on one of them. And then I added another subdivision surface. If I go to this one, I want to copy only the wireframe modifier. I don't want to copy everything else. Actually, just so the computer isn't too slow, I need to reduce this. Okay, now let's say I want to copy only the wireframe modifier. I already have the subdivision modifier on both of them. I want the wireframe modifier on this one, but I don't want to add the second subdivision modifier. If I do this, and then if I do Command L and I copy modifiers, it's going to copy the list of modifiers with any of the changes that I made to this. So for this one, I have the level viewport at 2, and for this one, I have it as 1 because I added the wireframe modifier and I needed the holes to be bigger. If I do copy with Command L and I say copy modifiers, it's going to apply every modifier from this one. It's going to delete all of the modifiers on this one if there were any, and then it's going to apply whatever is on this one with the exact same values. But what I need is to only duplicate the wireframe. So I can just do Control C on a Mac. Just be aware of that. It's not Command, it's Control C, because Command C is just going to do a regular copy of the object that you can later paste. So Control C, and then copy not modifiers, but selected modifiers. And then it's going to give me the list of modifiers in the same exact order. And I need to choose wireframe. And if you choose multiple, you can also deselect it by clicking on it again. Now that I have the wireframe modifier selected, I can just hit OK. And then only that is going to be selected. The subdivision is not applied here. So that's a wonderful add-on to add to Blender when you first start creating. And now if I make any edits to this one, or even this one, it applies to the other one while keeping their modifiers separate. This is an extremely useful tip that you'll be using in Blender often, and you'll hopefully love me for it. You have no idea the struggle I went through. Okay, now this is it for this tutorial, but I'll come back to explain how I used these copies in my thumbnail. Okay, so for the book, I did, I think, Alt D because I didn't know if I wanted it to look like that in the end or if I wanted to change a few things. So it is a linked copy. And it turned out I didn't really need any extra edits. And also note that with linked copies, you're also linking materials by default. So you don't need to do that Command L to link the materials from one object to another. It's already linked. So whatever material I apply to one of the books, it's going to apply to the other book. As for the other one, I really struggled with this star for some reason. There is a type of star that I've seen multiple times that I'm unable to find or recreate. So I did do a bunch of tests, and the last one worked. So I wanted to record and show how I create one of the objects and then duplicate multiple objects that are linked. So when I start making the star, it would demonstrate how the linked copies work, even though I did show it in the demonstration before. But it didn't work out because the star just didn't work out. I still duplicated them as linked objects because I wanted to make sure that whatever changes I make to one, like the book, applies to the rest. And then the materials are also linked by default. And you will be able to see it right here. As I changed the materials, I didn't have to select them all and then click Command L to link all of the materials, but I did have to link or copy all of the modifiers. I'm not sure which ones I did it for, but all I know is that I for sure did that. Well, I'm 100% sure I did that on the cover of the books that I created. And the final thing I created over here are the two bags. But with this one, I did a full copy or a separate copy when I duplicated the bag to add the second one on the other side because I wanted each of the bags to have a different look. So I wanted to edit one of the bags to fit differently in the space. Well, it's not that different, but I still wanted it to look more natural than the other stuff because with the stars and the plasticky book shape, like in real life, they can come uniform. So if you go to a store and you want to buy mugs or plastic like decorative books or stars like these, they're usually created with a mold. And so there is definitely uniformity. If there is any variations, it's in the materials or the textures that they have. But with bags, if you see a bunch of bags laying or tote bags or whatever hanging in the store, then you'll see that they will have different patterns or different shapes on how they are laying on the wall or how they're draping and falling into themselves. I wanted to show a normal copy in my thumbnail. Yeah, and that's pretty much it for this tutorial. It's a very simple one, a very short one, but like I said before, it's one of the most important things that I've learned in Blender and it helped me tremendously. All right, next week, there isn't going to be a tutorial just because it's a break in this challenge as a way to refresh. So there will be another video on the next Saturday of October. If I'm not mistaken, that would be October 14th. And until then, I'll see you on Instagram. Bye.